This week, we are going to discuss using your smartphone to run your channel and the advantages of a smartphone over a DSLR and some other smartphone stuff. We can talk Pixel, we can talk whatever, basically. So, thank you for joining me, and let's have a good stream. Wait for a couple people getting ready to hop on, so hopefully they're ready. I think that Google should have followed Apple's lead. They tried to, but they kind of fell apart by only partially following. Their pricing is way too high, and that concerns me. So we shall see how well they do in sales. I think that they would have been better off if they would have kept the price lower. And I think their issue is that by offering a lower model with the A series, that they're competing with themselves. So there's that. If anybody wants to join me, just send me a DM on Twitter or let me know in the chat, and I can send you a message and you can join me. Let me get the chat up. So a couple of the topics here would be, why would you use a smartphone over a digital camera? Can your smartphone be powerful enough and provide enough to run your own channel if you're a beginning creator, and how far can you go using it? And what disadvantages does it have in perspective to a DSLR and things of that nature? So hey, Tech for Your Needs, what's up? You want to jump on with me? I'll send you a link real quick. Exactly, as a beginning creator, and I've seen other creators continue to use their phone as their only tool for a very long time. I mean, if that's all you have and that's what you want to do, especially the mobility, yeah, there are vlogging cams and things like that, but then to live stream, you have to either use a hotspot or have direct like Wi-Fi connection to your laptop, and then your laptop connected to Wi-Fi. There's other issues. For example, with your smartphone, you can shoot edit, upload all right on the spot. A lot of time the processing power is way stronger on the smartphone than it is on DSLR. For example, when it comes to processing images for HDR, the phone just does it. Where if you have a DSLR and you want to do it, you have to do what's called bracketing, where you get multiple exposures, and then you have to know how to properly align those, and you have to have all the editing software, which can add expenses. That can be sometimes more expensive than the smartphone alone. And then you have to have a digital SLR to begin with, and then all the lenses. And a lot of smartphones today have multiple lenses and things of that nature. So, hey, what's up?
Yo, what's going on, bro?
I wondered when I was going to see you pop up on there. It took a minute.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to add me or something. I think it doesn't do it
Yeah, no,
automatic. So,
it took a second to pop up in my backstage
yo, do I
there.
sound good? I think I'm using my wireless headphones.
Yeah, you sound fine. I thought you were using the same thing I was for a minute, but
What is that?
AKG, the free
Sam
earbuds that come with the
Samsung, right?
Samsung. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I have a ton of those, man.
Last week I tried to use my the ones that came with my iPhone, and just everybody sounded really quiet to me, so it was weird.
Oh yeah.
Like they could hear me, but I couldn't hear them, so I went with better ones this week. So
Wait, what are you using right now? The iPhone?
this is I'm actually this is gonna be weird, but
I think you're breaking up.
I'm
Is it?
using Mac Mini with a LG 1080p camera webcam. We good, or
Yeah. Was it
that was
my
weird?
connection or your connection?
It must have been your connection. That was weird.
Oh, okay.
Like you
Yeah, it's
froze
raining
for a
right now.
second. So
It's kind of chilly outside, and the weather's pretty bad. So I just switched to Wi-Fi, so should be good now.
yeah, it was weird. It's been raining and kind of nasty here today too. So
Wait, you're in New York City, right?
no, I'm in Michigan,
Oh, okay.
but we have kind of similar weather going on right now. That's
Yeah,
from
whatever you got
particular.
is coming my way. So
It wasn't. It was raining pretty hard earlier, so and
yeah,
quite
so
windy.
I guess it came my way.
Made its way
Yo,
across the lake and all the way to you guys apparently.
yeah, man.
No,
So
I'm
what do we got tonight, man? We got to talk about DSLRs and smartphones.
yeah. So I was kind of getting into that, talking about the disadvantages and advantages of each, and um, as far as anybody, and as far as more like for creators and things like that nature. Like you and I, you're starting out. What's the advantages of one? What's the disadvantages of each? And I was kind of getting into that a little bit.
Right, right. So where'd you left off at?
So I was just starting to kind of talk about how with your smartphone you have the advantage of the processing power, and kind of the auto nature of things like bracketing modes. And I was starting to kind of explain how that works, and the whole idea of when you have your DSLR, then you have to know how to do post processing, and you have to know how to take those brackets and align them correctly in Photoshop. And sometimes that alone, the added software beyond just the digital camera, can be way more expensive.
Right, that's true. I mean, Final Cut Pro costs like what, $200, something around there.
Yeah, and
And then
even if you do the cheap, like 9.99 a month photographer's package for Photoshop, I mean that's about the cheapest way you're going to go. But then
yo,
you have to have a computer that's powerful enough. I mean, I can
right,
run
right,
that on my $300 used MacBook Air, but still.
right,
And you're going to carry that with you. Like I could be anywhere. I could be up in the mountains. I could be on the side of a cliff. Shoot, edit, upload, one-handed. Hanging off the side of a cliff with my phone. You're not going to do that.
right. Yo, have you tried the Adobe products for smartphones?
I
Adobe
have. I
Rush?
use actually use the Lightroom app all the time.
Yeah, it's pretty good, man. Yo, tech for your knees was gone, bro.
Hey, what's up? Not much. How you doing, fellas?
Doing good, doing good.
There we go.
Hmm.
Yeah, I use the Lightroom app
Yo,
all the
you look
time.
crisp as hell, bro. What are you using right now?
Who, me?
Yeah.
On the iPhone, nothing special. The iPhone XR.
Oh, the XR? The selfie camera?
Yep,
What
yep.
the heck?
I guess I'm in front of a light, so that's why.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what were you saying, Michael?
So, so as far as that, I mean, I like the fact that you can use the free version of Lightroom without having to pay for a subscription. The only reason you need subscription is to sync things across, but if I'm used to using it on my device, I don't have to pay, and you can just log in with your Google login or whatever and be good to go.
Right.
And you
Did
can
you
shoot
try?
RAW in there, but I haven't tried that. I think they need to update with the newer phones.
What do you mean? Oh, it's not working?
Um, to have some of the things like the dark, like night mode in that, you're not going to get that advantage unless they update.
Okay. Yeah, man. I used it for my OnePlus 7 Pro while I was on vacation, man. It came out pretty good. For Snapseed, for some reason I was having issues for RAW editing. It
Yes,
just kept loading and loading.
Snapseed had an issue.
Oh,
Actually, I had an issue with Snapseed. I'm on iOS 13.2, and when I was on beta 2, I had an issue. Then beta 3 came out, and it was fine because, like, every time I'd save a photo, I made the mistake of copying, like, overwriting the image and not doing a copy.
oh yeah, 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 I know what you mean.
And I completely lost it. I couldn't restore or anything once you do that. And apparently Snapseed had an issue, so I got that error where you get the little circle with like the exclamation point in it, basically that the
Yeah.
file's corrupted. And so I lost an image from that. Luckily, I only did that once and realized what was going on. So
Hmm. Yo, quick question. If someone came up to you and you're like, yo, I want to start a YouTube channel and I want to use a smartphone and I have like 500 bucks, 400 bucks, what would you recommend them to use?
LG G8, 500
Yeah,
bucks on
LG, right?
Amazon,
Hell yeah, hell yeah. I was thinking
or
LG too. Or what?
or if they have a little bit higher in their budget, I actually might tell them to look into the Asus Zenfone 6 because of
I never even touched an
the larger
Asus.
battery. The larger battery has like I think it's like a 5,000 or 6,000 milliamp hour battery. It's pretty big,
Uh,
But
but
yeah, but
that's
you also
six hundred
go ahead.
dollars. So I would go with the
600?
LG G8 for 500, especially if they're just starting, because like Amazon has that, and you don't have to have good credit, and you can get it for like $100 a month over 5 months too. That's the other.
Yeah. Yo,
Or
I've seen it on eBay for like 400 bucks unlocked,
yeah,
brand new. So you just gotta shop around. Yo, do you know why LG's prices has been dropping like so drastically?
because their PR is kind of
Oh,
iffy, and I think the G8 went down because now you have like the V50 came out, and
right.
then today they announced the G8X with the dual
Yeah,
screen for $700, which is cheaper than the G8 came out starting. Like that thing was, well, at least on a carrier, was like $800.
yeah. For I think T-Mobile it was actually 650 at one point, and it was buy one get one free,
Yeah, I got
which is
mine.
crazy.
I got mine on AT&T free with monthly credits. So
Nice.
That's what's up. But I got another question. What happened if the person say, "Well, LG is not a good brand recognition because they're new to the industry"? How can you combat that question? we could give them advice for a new channel, but people are into like iPhones and Galaxies.
Well, then if they're into like, hey, they want to go with an iPhone or a Galaxy, I'd say check out. You can get like an iPhone 7 or an iPhone 8 even online now for like super cheap. Like I've seen on Amazon the other day, I saw iPhone 8. It was in the renewed section, but you
Hmm.
could get 128 gig for like $400.
Yeah, but my question is more towards how can you convince them for the GA because it's a better buy due to the fact of the horsepower. But they knew they don't know better. How can you
Um,
convince the person?
well, a lot of devices use LG parts. Like Apple uses LG for their displays, for like their cinema displays and stuff
True.
like that. And as far as cameras, it has the same cameras as Samsung puts like in their S10 and Note 10 series.
Plus, they
And
also have good audio,
oh
right?
yeah, that
And they
quad
have the Pro
DAC,
mode.
still having the headphone
Uh,
jack, the Pro mode, wireless charging. You still have fast wired charging. I mean, it's a little behind because I think it's only 15 watt instead of 18 watt that most of them have gone to, but I've never had issues with that. Um, it has which some people are kind of iffy on, but it has the whole like behind the screen speaker where you get audio by basically vibrating what's behind it. So if you take it and you set it on a surface, it vibrates that. The whole boombox technology that they started with the LG G6 is built into it.
Oh yeah, it sounds louder.
And it's a little weird getting used to because it's not stereo speakers, it's actually dual speakers. So you have like the same audio coming from each as opposed to stereo where you have like your highs and your mids coming at you and then your low tones are coming through the bottom speaker. It's all both in each.
you think it feels kind of muffled in a way?
Um, if you leave it on default, so one of the things I noticed is I can't. Oh, where did I put it? Oh, it's around here somewhere. Um, if you go into the settings and you switch it so that it's side by side and instead of the like forward facing or the surround for the equalizer options on that, it's more balanced. It doesn't sound as muffled. And then also, it kind of depends on how you hold it. So it's one of those like, here's my iPhone. It doesn't really matter which way you hold that. But with the LG, as long as you're kind of centrally looking at it, so it's equally between your ears, I've noticed it doesn't really. And once you get used to it, you don't really hear that anyways.
Yeah, I know LG, they also have MST. Have you ever
Oh yeah,
tried
that's
it?
true.
What's that? Oh, you
MST
mean,
is it's like what Samsung Pay uses. Like you could use it and basically on any credit card reader.
oh yeah, that
Yeah,
magnetic. I
Yeah,
yeah,
haven't
magnetic.
I haven't used it because I didn't even know it had that. And
Yeah.
oh, I did. I did. Okay, I did know I had it, but my bank doesn't support LG Pay yet,
okay.
so I
Oh,
can't
that's
use
crazy.
the because Google Pay doesn't support it. Google Pay only supports NFC, like tap to pay, I do believe.
Yeah.
Oh
You have
yeah,
to
I
use
know.
actual LG Pay, and it doesn't support it. But my bank supports LG
Sam's.
or Samsung Pay, which is weird. But I think it has to do with um, like LG would have to pay the money to authenticate their fingerprint sensor and say that it's secure enough in order to
Oh,
get the yes, because I have a smaller bank, so they don't want to run the risk of, oh, you come on and you bring this LG Pay and it's not secure enough and we get hacked or something happens, somebody's money gets stolen, they lose a bunch of money
so
and
they
they
only
have to
have like
pay that all out.
contracts. So like they only have contracts with like the major branches like Chase, Bank of America, TD Bank, like that?
Yeah, and
Or
same goes with like credit cards and stuff. Like my credit union uses MasterCard,
right.
but I think LG Pay, like they don't support Discover, they don't support some of the other. It's mainly just MasterCard and Visa, and it's only through like the bigger, like you said, Bank of America and some of those bigger ones. Like I'm through a local smaller chain, and they just started fully supporting like Apple Pay and Samsung Pay, like maybe within the last year. So
Okay.
So I got a question.
go
So
for it.
the question is, since we're talking about smartphones, when it's time to let go of a smartphone and transition to a major camera, a high end, when is the time? That's my key. That's my question because you could go so much far with a cell phone, but if your channel's taking off, and then by your channel taking off, you get side jobs outside. You cannot record a party or something else with a smartphone. People give you credit and liking what you're doing, then it's time you to upgrade your equipment. So my question is, when it's time to upgrade it?
I would say when you get that recognition where people are asked, or when you look into that, like not everybody does those side gigs. So some people they could run their channel for years and years and years and never have to get away from a smartphone. But like for me, well, I don't know. It's kind of changing. And
Mhm.
because I let people know that I always use my smartphone for my photography, it might be one thing, but I'm not somebody that shoots weddings, but I've done portraits for people that I know, and I shot my cousin got married in another state, and then she had a reception up here, and I did some of her images with my smartphone. And I think it just depends, like if you're secure enough in it and know what you're doing, there's certain kinds of photography you could still use a smartphone for, and people are doing that more and more. Even like major magazines and stuff are doing that. As far as when you would shift is when you're needing the advantages of things like longer telephoto lenses, higher shutter speeds when it's dark out because you're trying to shoot kids running around in sports events and things like that. Um, and you need more than just the basic lenses that are on a smartphone, and you need to be able to let in a lot more light, and you're shooting in a lot of dark scenes or you're shooting inside a lot, so you need the added equipment because it's more than just the camera itself. You got to think, even if you add in um, like strobe lights or constant lighting, depending on what you're doing, you can use a lot of those with a smartphone sometimes. But in order for that to sync up, you're going to need that DSLR, so it's in sync with your shutter speed.
All right. So what about for audio? Do you recommend like what is it called, like a lavalier mic, or just using the iPhone's mic? What would you say?
I would say it depends on the environment. Like if you're just doing what I'm
Correct.
doing right here, you could get away with
Right.
just built-in if you wanted. But if you're in loud environments or like you're recording you and another person, having the advantage of like I can clip a microphone to myself, and then I could um, like have another microphone hooked to somebody else. More and more smartphones are supporting dual audio input in the default built-in camera app even. And so if you had a Bluetooth supported or a device, a microphone that supports it, you could go wireless for doing interviews. But as far as that, you could just be wired and just kind of hold it. I've seen people do that all the time where they use a lavalier mic and they hold it and they go between them and the other person. I've also
Right.
seen, I've also seen
Mhm.
people take like they'll have let's say they upgraded and they had an iPhone 6S, and they decided after what, 5 years or whatever, they're going to jump up and get the iPhone 11. They could take their old, I've seen people do this, they'll use their old phone and they'll use like the recorder app to record the other person, and then they'll just bring it in, and because it marks that file with the metadata for the time, they can just edit it in. Now you're not going to do that on the phone. That would be where the advantage of, at least not easily, where the advantage of having just a simple plug-in microphone that uses headphone jack. Whether you have, well, that's the other thing. That's why I would recommend the LG G8 as well, because you have the built-in. You don't have to have, because the problem with other smartphones is you have to have an adapter, and then you have to know that that headphone adapter to Lightning or to USB-C is supported by your particular microphone manufacturer that you're using.
Yo, is it true that LG is the best smartphone when it comes to audio recording?
From what
I've
I
heard
heard,
I've
yes,
heard that as far as because their built-in recording app has 24-bit audio
that
encoding built into it, and I've
Mhm.
heard some of the demos are crazy, and like the even stereo recording is pretty amazing. But as far as that though, you can get binaural audio recording headphones that plug right in, and they have a DAC in them, and basically whatever you hear is what's getting recorded. So like if you were on my right, Alter Tech and Tech for Your Needs was on my left, and I was talking to you guys and we were here live together, and I could then take that audio and split, and when that plays back on YouTube, you would be to my right, you'd be to my left.
Oh, that's
that makes
crazy.
sense.
And that's not even necessarily requiring extra equipment, because I've seen that's just wired. Like you don't have to have some fancy external DAC. I've seen it done with an iPhone. I've seen it done with Samsung device. I've seen it done with an LG. I mean, there's options out there. And in some cases, the advantage of having the device have that in it means you can use it with any smartphone. You don't have to be like, well, I need this quad DAC smartphone because it's got to support weird input, or I got to carry this box around that requires 4 really large batteries in order to be able to use it without being plugged in. Because then you get to the point of you're investing so much that you might as well have spent that on like a even like a mirrorless camera or something that has audio input. Like if you start getting to the point where you need all these boxes, it's going to be more portable for you to get a smaller like mirrorless camera that you can plug directly into and supports all external audio, or even like the GoPro Hero, the new one that has the adapter where you can actually hook into two audio sources into that. Might
Okay.
be cheaper if you get to the certain point where you're gonna have to be looking into spending, you know, $250 on a box to convert your audio.
Wait,
That's the
so
advantage.
what kind of a mic would you suggest, plugging into like a mirrorless camera? Because I do have one, and the built-in mic on this it really sucks. This is the the Panasonic Lumix G7. Um,
So does that use a
yeah,
standard? Does that use a standard input, or does it have some like proprietary connection? Like, is it a standard like 3.5 millimeter, or does it have a weird
yeah,
adapter? Because like
it's
mine, I
a
have to get an adapter for it.
no, it's a 3.5.
So there's a
So
company, and I do believe that
is it
Tech
the one
for
that
Your
I
Needs
use?
mentioned. Yeah,
Yeah, I was thinking
that's
about
a good
that.
one.
On Amazon, they
There's
have that, huh?
there's
Fifty
also a
dollars.
company. Yeah, there's also a company
Yo,
called Deity,
Oh yeah, Diddy's.
Diety, and they make some pretty good microphones and flashes and different things, and they are making ones specifically for like smartphones now that only require 3.5 millimeters, so they don't require you to have an adapter or external DAC. So that would work with that too.
And also gonna say something. They had the same mic for Lightning. Saw in the Apple Store yesterday. So they had the same thing, but just through Lightning for iPhones.
And how much is that? I think it's on Amazon for like what, 35, 40, right?
Yeah, this one is 50, 60, no more than that.
Oh, okay.
And
So that one's a little
everybody
bit
got
more
it.
expensive because that one I
And,
believe comes with like the windsock and like
oh yeah, let
off-camera
me show you the
tripod
box.
and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more.
Let me go slow so you
Because
can see it.
there's also the Rode Video Micro. I was going to get that or either this one that he's
Yeah,
showing
that,
us
that
right
is
now.
that is the video micro. This one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because on
I've
Amazon,
looked
for
at
some
And
reason, they took off the Rode version, and they're only pushing that brand that he's showing right now. I'm not exactly sure why, but
I th- I wonder if it had to do with they were becoming so popular because so many people were recommending them that um they couldn't keep up with demand or something, or maybe this company is paying more, because I know sometimes like optimization, they'll pay companies to be higher up on the list.
that's what I think too. Maybe, I mean, maybe like the profit margins are so high that they could actually make a contract with Amazon, and be like, hey, you guys could take off Rode and just push our product, and we'll give you like a big slice of the pie.
And who
That's what I was
knows?
feeling.
I
Yeah,
mean, for all we know,
mhm.
they could be one and the same company. Like I've heard of that happening where they like
that is
come
true.
out with a sister company or a daughter company or whatever you want to call it, and they kind of
Yeah, the parent company and
sneak
then
their
the
way in and say, "Hey, we can offer something that's good at a lower price," because if they were to do that themselves, like step in and be like, "Hey, we're just gonna offer this," that would be undercutting themselves, and that might not look good to the consumer. But if they just were to come in as a separate company and nobody really kind of realized it, it wouldn't be so bad.
yeah, can I say
Right.
something about this Rode microphone? That everybody's using it not only for camera, they also use it for recording voiceovers. There's a lot of millions and millions of YouTube video on it. I think people use it as a regular mic connected to their computer. They have used it different ways they have used it. So it's a versatile mic. It's not only just for the camera.
Wait, you're talking about the Video Micro?
Yeah, this one. So everybody has used it like they're connected to their camera and they'll put like a mic stand next to it below the camera and they record with the camera like that and it'll work. You don't have to really get another third party microphone.
You know what? I'm
For
gonna pick one up.
Yeah, for off-camera shooting and stuff, that'd be handy. Or like if you do
Mhm. Correct.
voiceovers, or even people that are musicians and stuff, I've seen use that. But I've also seen, I don't know if I think it was Jonathan Morrison that did the video of um, the piano player and the girl that was singing, and he just used his iPhone 11 to shoot the whole thing. And
I didn't see that video.
he had an adapter that he used to connect a standard microphone, because it has the 3-pin adapter that like a standard musician's microphone would use. Um,
Mhm.
he had that inputting into one of the iPhone 11s that he had propped up, and it was recording the girl singing, and then he had another iPhone that was recording and showing the guy playing piano. But he also showed in another video the audio just straight out of the iPhones, and it was pretty impressive. Comparatively, like if you didn't listen super close, I don't think you would have noticed.
That's with the iPhone 11.
Yeah, but you know what?
Yeah. Well, I think it was
It
the 11
depends.
Pro.
Oh,
Yeah, but it depends because I recorded like a wedding. Well, I did two weddings, but I recorded a wedding without audio because and since I was so close to the speaker and everything, on my camera it sounds super crispy, like I had an audio interface. but I didn't. I didn't have no micro, nothing. I just got away with it because the proximity of the object, which is my camera, and everybody what they was doing, it was close enough. They were speaking of crispy audio, so that also take effect. Because you got to look where you put your audio, how far and how close.
That's true.
Wait, and you're using the iPhone 11?
No, I was using my DSL, my mirrorless camera, the Panasonic, but the reason
Oh,
that it was super crispy because I was close. I was in the middle recording, the the
right.
groom and whatever the couple. So I got away with it.
And you're using the video micro attachment?
No, at that time I didn't have it. I had
Oh, okay.
ordered, but didn't came on time. So I got lucky that I got away with it because the way that I positioned the camera, it was always facing towards them, but also was facing towards the audio will come in the best that I could clearly to the camera audio. So it was 10 times
Yeah,
better
yeah,
than
that's the
if it
thing,
was
man. When you're
placed.
recording video, the audio source, the closer you are, the better it's gonna sound. That's how it is. If I take my DSLR and I talk like right behind it where the mic is, the audio sounds really damn good, but if I just face it away from me, it sounds horrible.
If
So,
you
What kind of
see,
camera you have?
the Panasonic G7.
Oh, me too. I got the same one.
Oh yeah?
if,
Yeah, it's a
Hmm.
good startup camera for small YouTubers. I mean,
And
have
4K
let me
either of
is
tell
pretty
you a
you
good.
story. Go
Huh?
ahead.
have either of you seen the demonstration at all that shows the Zoom audio function when you zoom in with like the iPhones and compared to like the Note 10 Plus at all?
Yeah,
Where like it
I
picks up
phoned
the
it did it.
audio source as you zoom in, it changes. So like um if I'm standing and I'm talking and then you're standing like 25 feet away from me and I do telephoto and zoom in on you and you're talking, my voice goes quieter and yours goes louder because it's virtually basically saying you're now closer and I'm kind of further away and trying to balance the sound out. That video was incredible. I don't know if you saw that at all, Altered Tech or not, but
Wait, the iPhone has that same feature on the Galaxy Note 10?
it has the same feature as the Note 10, yeah.
Holy
Correct.
crap. And you said
But
it's
the
better?
iPhones was like way better. So
Wow.
the the
Yo,
dem
Apple did a crazy good job this year, man. Holy crap.
the
Yes, sir.
demonstration that he gave was he's standing and there's a waterfall and he's recording that and then he kind of pans left and because he's standing on the sidewalk and he kind of pans left from like and he has a lady that's standing down the sidewalk probably maybe 20-25 feet
Hmm.
and she's just talking and she's talking the whole time but as he pans you can hear like on the iPhone you hear the waterfall get quieter and you hear her voice start to get louder and then when he zooms in you hear her voice get a lot clearer and he's talking too and his voice starts getting quieter and then he kind of brings it back and you hear it do the reverse where her voice gets quieter and the water and the it's not a waterfall fountain gets louder and then his voice picks back up. But when he does that on the Note 10, everything just gets louder. So when he moves, basically it's just boosting the microphone pickup to be able to pick up her voice. So then the water gets louder, his voice gets louder, her voice gets louder, but you can't really hear her as clear because everything else is so loud too. Like there's not that separation like the iPhone version separates. I also
That's
saw a
crazy.
demo where this guy took and he had a video that he had done his own YouTube video and he took and he had a laptop with it on a stool and then he had like an iPad across the room and he was standing equally between kind of equidistant between the two sources and he zoomed in on the laptop and it picked up and then he kind of zoomed back out and then he went and did the same thing with the iPad, and it picked up, and he zoomed back out. And he did this with the Note, but as he zoomed in, the problem was it was actually picking up like almost like an echo, because he started the one video after the other, so that way you knew, and it was two different videos, but that way you knew if it was segregating the audio from one and picking up the other or not. But you could hear the audio from both on the Note, no matter which, because it was just amplifying that audio, and it wasn't really picking up and recognizing where he had it pointed. But when he did that with the iPhone, when he zoomed in on the one that was kind of to his right, it picked up that, but the one to the left, you didn't hear. And then he came back, zoomed out, and then when he zoomed into the one on the left, you could hear what that was playing, but you couldn't hear the one on the right as much. So it even kind of recognized where which way he had it pointed. It didn't just say, well, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to pick up the audio that's 25 feet away and I'm going to make anything closer sound quieter. It quite literally was able to say, hey, this source is one way and this source is the other, so I'm going to only pick up what it's pointing toward.
Yeah,
Wow.
like the primary source and the secondary source.
Wait, is this feature available on the iPhone 11 or just on the Pro?
I think it's all of them, I'm pretty sure.
Are you
I'm not sure
serious?
about the 11, but I'm
Because
100%
I'm
sure
pretty
in the Pro.
sure it's all of them, because it's the because it has to do with because all of them have the same number of microphones and the
That's right.
same processor. The only difference is the one camera, but
Telephoto, right?
Yep.
the wide angle and ultra wide angle are capable of still doing. I mean, like you can still do portrait mode and it still knows distance. So I imagine that it can still, but that would be the thing though. You wouldn't have, so maybe not on the 11 because you don't have that telephoto.
Yo, if you guys could choose between the wide and the telephoto, which one would you pick?
Wide
Why?
angle.
Wide, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, when I
And
saw that Google, what was it, the keynote event, and you just said that, telephoto was better than the wide angle was more important. I was like, I was screaming inside, man. It's just crazy.
well, I can
Okay.
show. I mean, I can show you guys
Go
why.
ahead.
So,
Okay,
oops,
go
let me
ahead.
turn the brightness down on that a little bit. I can get it to. So here's like that's the normal. That's like the wide angle normal, right? I don't know if you
Right.
can see it very well.
Yeah, I can see it.
Here's that same shot ultra wide. You see those middle trees
Right.
there? That's what is there. Like
Hmm.
that's just the difference between the wide and the ultra wide. I mean, and then yeah, telephoto's nice, but ultra wide I'd rather have because there are instances where you just can't step back any further. Like
Right.
you're in a
Right.
room and you're trying to get everybody in the room. I can't step any back any further if I'm in the corner of a room. But I can almost always step closer. And as far as telephoto, I've mentioned this before on I think on I commented on a couple people's Twitters and stuff like that and some videos that most smartphones, unless you have a ton of light, when you switch to that 2x, it just crops in using the standard lens anyways. Like all of them just crop in. And then the other thing, I don't know if either of you picked this up at all, but
Hmm.
when Google did their announcement and they talked about telephoto, they put quotes around the 2x. And if you look, it's because the actual lens change itself is only like 1.7 or 1.8 times, and then it uses digital to do the rest.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Wow.
So even if you were, so if you're in an area where lighting is going to affect it, and you're going to get a lot of digital noise, you're going to be able to go like that 1.7 or 1.8 times, but that extra zero point 0.2, zero point 0.3 times to get to that just standard 2x is digital. So if you're going to have digital noise, you're going to have it. Where um, that might be the instance that it's gonna just use the standard lens by default and crop in like every other phone does. Because I don't know if you know this, but um, on the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max, um, you can do night mode on both the standard and the telephoto lens, but it's not on the ultra wide. But
Okay.
if I've had instances where when I switched to the telephoto to do night mode, all it actually did was crop on the regular, so it was really, really grainy. But I did figure out if I covered up the standard lens and switched, it forced it to switch to the telephoto.
Oh,
That's crazy.
And it's the same, like, and some people wondered why the ultra wide lens doesn't have some of the same things. It's because it's fixed focus, so there's no change in focal length. It's just it's like a infinite focal length, and the aperture is smaller, so to let in enough light like the other ones, you don't get that. And I've noticed that when it's dark out, like if you switch, like even in some of my photos when it was pretty light out today, when I switched, telephoto looked really good, wide looked really good. But then when I went to ultra wide, some of those trees were a little dark. So um, I took care of that in editing, though. Afterwards, I just was able to go in and bump the shadows up, and you didn't really notice it. I think,
but you know what? Can I say something?
yeah,
Yeah.
A person told me if you don't have white um, camera, they you could replace that. You could do panorama, I think it's called. So it's not the same thing, but you still could get a wide view of view. That's what they
but
told me. A view,
here's the issue
like
with that. What are
mm.
you gonna do for video, though? Like, you're gonna stand here and like sweep back and forth to get everything?
No, not on video, but they were talking about photos. Video is difficult, but they just give me examples that if you don't have it and you need it, like mandatory, you could try to do tricks. But
The
I
other,
told them it's not gonna work in every instant
yeah,
because
Right.
if you draw
Right.
a picture of people, you cannot be panning left to right.
and if the subject's moving at all, so like you have a group of people, like with the
Mhm.
wide angle, you could have everybody jump up in the air and snap the photo, but you can't do a panorama of that.
Correct.
Or like you're you're outside and the trees are moving at all, having a single frame is always an advantage over trying to stitch those multiple frames together in a panorama.
No, I agree, but I understand the point of he's saying that for a pinch, it might work. So that it's okay.
Yeah. And one thing I didn't know, because I don't think it was mentioned, is that you can actually do a panorama with all three lenses on the iPhone. So you can do telephoto, wide
Wow.
or ultra wide
Oh.
panoramas.
Holy crap.
So I did that. I experimented with that. Stood in the same place I was at the state park by a lake the other day, and it was funny because when I was using ultra wide and I did the whole distance, I literally got from, like, it included the lake and it went all the way around to this to the beach I was standing and all the way around back towards the parking lot and included part of the parking lot. When I was just doing the
There you
wide,
go. That's a video.
when I just did the wide, it was the beach, like part of the beach and the lake, and then telephoto was just the lake. Like, it adjusts, and you and moving the same distance, it smartly adjusts so it's not like you're gonna only get the same area that you're covering. You get more area by going ultra wide, which I think is interesting because I don't know that I've tried that. Like on, I think my G8, when you go ultra wide, it actually restricts the distance that you're covering, which is weird.
Um, that's interesting.
Mhm.
I think for the OnePlus 7 Pro, I don't think it restricts, and it also has night mode on the wide angle lens. It actually works pretty good. So that's
Yeah,
also interesting.
I wonder though, and I know this is gonna people are gonna be a lot of hate for saying this, but I wonder if that's something that could be done in an update, though. Like, if enough people wanted it, like, could Apple come out with it in an update? I don't
I'm
know.
pretty sure they could, man. They could.
I think
You
that
know,
for now, I mean, you got to think this is the first generation of them doing any night mode.
All right.
true.
Like, my OnePlus 6T has night mode, and it's awful. Like, I tried it last night, and it was awful. But I was in a pitch black room, and yeah, it didn't turn out great, but like, if I absolutely needed to take a picture of something and show it to somebody, I was able to get a picture of a bag of Doritos, and you could tell what it was on the iPhone, and literally I just had like a night light on next to the bed. I tried to do that with like any other phone, and either the exposure had to be really long to the point where you would definitely have to put that thing on a tripod, or it was just pitch black or blurry and it just looked like a smear of nothingness in front of me. Like, it was amazing. Like, even the just 3 second exposure on the iPhone was noticeable, and then I went and did the 10 second. I was like, wow, it's like that light is just enough.
Yo, I'm pretty shocked at Samsung. I thought their night mode would have been a lot better. They're actually pretty behind, man. I think OnePlus actually might be on par with OnePlus when it comes
I
to night mode.
I think
What up,
OnePlus
Ronaldo?
I think OnePlus is actually, oh, this is gonna piss a lot of people off. I already know if people watch this or people are in here, but I actually think OnePlus is better than any other Android device out there with their night mode. Even better than the Pixel. Like, I've seen,
It
like,
comes out brighter, right?
well, and it's brighter, but not in a way that's unrealistic as much as some of the other ones do. Like, it's brighter than what it should be. Like, the one thing that people compliment with the iPhone's night mode is a lot of times it comes out darker, but you can still tell it's night, so it's more true to life, and you can always go in and punch up the details. But some of them come out so bright that it's like daylight, and you can't bring those down because they're already overexposed, like light sources and some stuff
Yeah, highlights.
and highlights. So the from what I could
Um,
tell, the OnePlus,
did you see? Do you know The Unlocker? So
yeah,
he's a tech YouTuber. He
Yeah,
posted a couple pics with the night mode on the Pixel 4 XL, the Apple 11, the iPhone 11 Pro, the OnePlus 7T, and the Samsung Note 10, all using night mode. And surprising, like you said, the night mode on the OnePlus 7 Pro actually came out really good.
did you
What
see
I see.
did you see the video that was done at all? It was MKBHD and
superstar.
Supersaf that did the Pixel 4 versus iPhone video.
No, I didn't see it.
So
What
just
happened?
basically they did a side by side, and Supersaf knew which was which because he put it all together, but Marquez had no idea like which was from which, and he kind of had to guess. After the first one, he could kind of figure it out, but like he was even surprised. Like, wait a minute, that was the iPhone one. I thought that would have been the Pixel one, and things like that. With some of them, were obvious because like the field of view being slightly larger, you could tell. Like, even just comparing the wide to the wide before he even popped up that ultra wide, you could tell. But what was interesting is in the end, um, Saf asks, he goes, if you had to just carry one of these, you're going away for the weekend. Just one of these phones, you can only bring one with you because, he's like, we have the advantage of we bring two devices with us. So a lot of us carry, like, we'll carry an iPhone for video and we'll carry another smartphone for photo. Which would you do? And both of them basically said they would carry the iPhone.
All right.
Like,
That's how
even,
I'm feeling right now, man.
I think even apart from the video, that was the thing. He's like, what if I took out video shooting? He's like, still, like, they liked some of the Pixel ones better, like, but one of the things that they pointed out was the Pixel has better edge detection in some circumstances, but when it fails horribly. Where with the iPhone, it tends to soften the edges, so if it doesn't pick it up perfectly, you don't notice it, and it's more realistic to like if you were to be using a DSLR and you accidentally close down the aperture beyond what you should and it's a little soft on the edges. That's how
Right.
Apple handles it. It's more like, oh, we didn't get the edges right, but we don't make it so sharp. Where the Pixel was like, hey, we're just gonna hack this off. So like the edge of a collar, like the point, there was a point where it came up, and the one Pixel it like chopped it right off. Where the iPhone didn't catch it perfectly, but you didn't even notice that because it was such a smooth transition.
And this is for portrait mode, right?
And for that was for portrait mode. And then when he was in night mode, one of the things that was pointed out was a lot of the Pixel ones had a lot of grain, like in the sky, and like one of them, it was in the sky and the water. Like the water looked like it had a weird texture to it as opposed to like reflecting the light. It just looked like I don't even know how to explain it. It just looked like a weird, funky texture. Where the iPhone one was a little darker, but you could see the sky and you could see like a blue streak through the sky and you could see that the water was there and know that it was water and not like cement or asphalt. And as far as the lights, they weren't as blown out either. And I was really shocked. I'm like, this is Apple's first try at this, and I feel like they're already ahead of a lot of the night modes.
Do you have any idea like what they were doing like behind the scenes, like who they hired and who was in charge of it, and what kind of procedure they actually did to get these images right, like what
So
kind of testing and whatnot?
my guess is that
Right.
what they did, because they like to do this, is they looked at Google and saw where people were complaining, and they saw how Google handled it with like the multi-frame, like long exposure and multi-frames and stuff.
Right.
And Apple already does that with HDR, like the technology that they use for HDR, where it does well, they started it last year, but like the 11 series, the way that they do it, where it's basically buffering in a bunch of frames, and then the minute you click the button, it takes 4 of those that have already buffered in, and then it takes a current one, and then it takes 4 more. But in those, there is a long exposure to get the dark details, and then a quick exposure to get the highlights. And that's like a long exposure is from one of the previous 4, and then with the like the next 4, there's a quick exposure, and then the current one, the one that would be like in the middle, would be what it considers to be a well balanced exposure overall. So you take that one in the middle, you take the 4 that were recorded after and the 4 that were recorded before, and you put them all together, and it basically creates a bracketed HDR image. But it's also calculating 2 million pixels all at the same time, or
Wow.
24 million. So it's like, a
I mean,
standard
that's what they
12
were talking about in the
megapixel
keynote,
image
right?
is, and that's what they're talking about. But with the night mode, it does something very similar, which I don't think people have pointed out, and I don't know if anybody knows this or noticed it, but I think it's important for people to know that when you snap a night photo, and I've noticed this because I've moved a little bit when I've done it, and I've tested it with my other phones. If I'm standing there and I'm shaking a little bit, it doesn't seem to be blurry, and even on the screen, I don't see it moving like in the live image that's showing what's going on.
Are
So
you
I think,
serious?
yeah, I think it takes into effect your movements a little bit because you gotta.
Probably.
So it snapped that one real quick, and then in the behind the scenes 4 images that it's capturing in like the dark, and 4 that are in the for the highlights and 4 for the shadows, that it's using that, and then if you've moved at all, that it kind of overlays those images and then crops so any movement is negated, and the fact that it has all these frames that it's able to get so much detail from. So if you've moved a little bit, it can kind of realign with all of those.
Oh,
Because
that
I've
makes
noticed
sense.
that, and I've noticed the detail is just crazy.
They're probably just taking
Well,
advantage of the processing power, and you have the gyroscope, all those measurements, and it's just so many things happening at once, man. It's just crazy.
And the other thing that's funny about that is that's not even
mhm.
taking the advantage of the deep fusion technology, because
Oh,
that
not
doesn't
yet.
kick in. That
Yo,
doesn't kick in the dark.
what is deep fusion exactly? Is it what is it?
So we talked about how Smart HDR does bracketing. We talked about how night mode does these multiple images and
Right.
exposures. It's the middle ground. So it's when it's
Yeah.
not super bright out where you need to get where you need to have that HDR that's capturing the bright sun
It's in
behind
between.
you and the shadows of your face or whatever, or the shadows to the highlights. And then night mode that's trying to bring out detail in the dark. It's that middle ground. It's when you have that like it's not dark enough that night mode's going to kick on, but it's not bright enough that you need HDR. It's in the middle, so you're getting detail in like the mid-level light. And it also is for texture because it's doing the multiple exposure thing. So you get more detail in fabrics and things like that. So when they demoed it and they joked about the sweater was a point, because it was one of these, well, it doesn't work when night mode's on, and it's not working when HDR mode is on. So when is it working? Well, it's working when you're inside and you have good enough light, but you're not going to have the light like you have outside requires that has the huge contrast for HDR, and it's not so dark that you have night mode. It's that mid level. I mean, if you're at the bar, night mode might come on because it's so dark, but like, if you're just around the house and you have light, like even lighting like I'm in right now is fairly bright, but deep fusion is what's going to kick on, and it's going to combine those frames, and it's going to create more detail. And like I've noticed, like I took a picture of a stuffed animal the other day, and like the detail in the fake hair was amazing.
Wow, that's
The
crazy.
the one
But
issue
you know
that
what? I
I
bet
have,
you. I bet you that everybody's gonna demo the same thing with a sweater, because that's what everybody's gonna do. Like try to mimic the actual keynote.
For
I think
Apple?
so too. I mean,
Yeah.
if you noticed, like the iPhone
hmm
was the company was that kind of started the simple box for unboxing, where you pop it up and the phone's right there, and then you take that up and your charger's underneath and everything. So then every other company started doing that, because they used to go all out and they used to use tons of plastic and stuff. And then when Apple said,
Oh
hey, we're
man,
stepping
you're
away
right.
from
Yeah, I
plastic
remember that.
and we're going to use this cardboard, and it's going to be slightly bigger than your device, and we're also going to show like the image on the side, like they've been doing that since like the original iPhone, where you see the screen, um and you see the side, like. And then when cameras became prominent, they started showing the back and the side, so you could see, oh, this device has two cameras, or this device has, and when the iPhone 10 came out, it was all about that display, that OLED display and that notch. So the box had the front, but the iPhone 8s, those boxes all had the cameras on the back to show you that they had the 8 had the single lens and the 8 Plus had the two lenses or whatever. And then every other company started doing that, where Samsung shows their pen because it's the Note, and their keynotes even follow along. Like before that, people were sitting down. Like you'd walk in and it was like you were in their living room and they were sitting down. Now, for the most part, everybody's standing up. And what they demo and what they talk about, and they talk about everything, and they talk about the ecosystem, and they talk about how they're selling. Like, that's what Apple did, and now other companies kind of step in there.
But you know what I
Except
like about
LG.
Apple, to tell you the truth, that I like their wait. They don't do things first. I know somebody got to innovate in order to move forward in the industry. And some, but being first doesn't mean doing better. So I'd rather have a company that wait and do it better. That's my opinion.
Well, you can also think about it this way, like, so Apple's not the first to do a lot of things, but like you said, a lot of times they're the ones that do it right then.
Hmm.
So they're smart because they can learn from others' failures. So yeah, they have a bunch of money, but how do you think they got that money? Like, they let others come out with the technology and make it or break it, and if they fail at it, then Apple can be like, hey, we learned from that, we saw what you did wrong, and we're going to step in and do something similar because we think it can be great, and we'll perfect it before we release it.
Yeah,
Because
it's funny you say that, but what was the problem with the wireless charging pad?
what was the problem with that? Okay,
Yeah.
so most people, well, a lot of people, if they follow me on Twitter and they know me well enough, they know that I started out as like a huge Apple fan, like, but that was mainly because that's what I grew up with in my house.
Hmm.
But then as Android got better and as they brought out the things, like, for the longest time I was waiting for an Android device to come out that had as good of cameras as the iPhone, because for me, even though the iPhone cameras might have not been that great, the fact that I didn't have to sit around and wait for like a minute after I snapped the photo for another one to pop up was a huge issue. Because even my Note 8, I remember sitting there hitting the button and in that delay, and I grabbed my iPhone 6S and I could take it. So, but once that market shifted and the customization and the cameras and everything that I wanted was available on Android, then I started looking into more of those. But to get back to what you were saying, um, wow, that just happened. Um, so as far as
The wireless
the
pad.
wireless charging pad,
Yeah.
so Apple uses the Qi standard charging, but they also are sort of proprietary with it, where in order to get, because originally when their wireless charging was out, it was still the standard 5 watt, and then they had an update that brought the 7.5 watt charger.
Oh yeah.
But that was because Apple basically wanted to get an understanding with manufacturers to follow a standard, because even though Qi charging was a standard, there were still so many different versions out there, and they didn't want a device to try to accept more charging than it's capable of and overheat. And they also wanted
Oh.
a limiting on like the temperature that it's going to create by wireless charging. And I think that they couldn't get a manufacturer to fit their standards. So they dropped that, because you would have to have a company that could create something that basically the Qi charger can shift. Because if you think about it this way, the iPhone, the wattage that it can accept, I think it's only up to 7.5 watts still for wireless charging. But it hasn't really been tested on the newer devices to know if it goes up higher than that. Like, I don't know. They don't really give away that you can test that very easily. Like, you can't download an app, really. I've tried. I've looked at all of them. Like, none of them really tell you what the wattage for wireless charging is on an iPhone. But then their AirPods are going to have a different amount of wireless charging that they accept. And then the Apple Watch has, so the idea of this pad was it didn't really matter where you set the device, but I don't think that they could manufacture a pad in time that was able to intelligently understand, oh, you're setting an iPhone on there, so we'll let it go up to 7.5 watts or 10 watts or whatever. Now you're setting AirPods down. we're going to only let it go to 5 watts or whatever. You're setting an Apple Watch down, we're going to let it go to 5. And unless they wanted to say, hey, we're going to release this device, but you're going to have to basically, it will only work with our next generation of device. Like, it won't work with all the Apple Watches, and it won't work with AirPods yet, because
Oh, I see. I
we're going to
see.
say all the spots have to support 7.5 watt charging or
Right.
10
Right.
watt. They want it to be able to shift, and I don't see that. That didn't happen.
Yeah, shift up and down depends on the device you put.
I mean, the chip in the device can see, that's where Apple has kind of done something interesting. So the chip in the device can actually control the wattage, because there is a potential that a higher wireless charging could be supported by the iPhone, but Apple regulates it because they don't want all heat created, because what good does it do if it can support 15 watts, but it creates so much heat that the device can't actually accept all that and just has to take half of it anyways, or loses a lot of that charge with heat. So Apple says, hey, we're just going to support up to an optimized percentage. It's the same thing with their wired charging. Um, I've seen these demos, and I got into a discussion with somebody about it because they were showing the 18-watt wireless charger of the Note 10, the 27-watt charger wireless charging with the Huawei P30 Pro, and then 18-watt wired charging with the new iPhones. And they did a empty to like full charge test,
Right.
and the 27-watt charger finished like 20 minutes before Apple's 18-watt wired charger. But my point was, if you were to look at the total battery capacity of the Huawei phone versus Apple's iPhone, and then you were to look at how long it took, and the fact that they were like, because they were like neck and neck until the last little bit, and then Huawei's finished up, and then Apple's took that extra 20 minutes. And then the Note was still charging after the iPhone did, which was some weird glitch because it should have been about the same time. But if you were to take in the milliamp hours that the batteries have, Huawei should have charged a lot faster. So Apple's
Right.
actually, even though it finished later, if you looked at how many milliamp hours like it charged per minute, Apple's was actually technically charging faster with a lower wattage charger. And somebody
So
argued, well, you're talking about wired versus wireless. Not really, though, because wireless is still measured as a wattage. It's not measured as, oh, this is what comes out of the wireless device. It's measured as what the device is accepting.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah, but also I got a question with that. It's also depends because if you put it together, right? Um, Let me see how I could explain this. Like it depends on the how big is the battery. Am I right or wrong? Because I'm not
yeah,
clearly
but that's what I was saying.
understanding.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that's why I didn't do like, that's why like 0 to 100% is bad. It's more of like, you should test to a battery capacity. So, like, if you were to test all 3 of those devices, that's why all of them basically get to the same point. Like, all of them will charge up to 50% at about the same speed, and then they slow down even though they have different battery capacity. But that's software. But some of them will take longer to do that final percentage, and others might make it 5% because it has a larger battery, because it's talking about milliamp hour versus percentage. So, like, iPhone has a 3969 milliamp hour battery on the Pro Max. The Note has a 4300. The Huawei P30 had a, like, was it 4200 or something like that? But so if Huawei's last one percentage would be beyond the milliamp hours that the total iPhone is even at. So you can't really look at percentage. You got to look at more like 0 to a certain milliamp hour. It's like filling up two different cars is going to take two different amount of gas. You can't really compare how long it takes me to fill an 18-gallon tank with the same fuel at the same rate as a 30-gallon tank. You got to kind of, it should reach the same fill level at the same point. That's why I don't like those tests. But
But
if
you
you
know
were to
also,
if you were to
Huh?
account for
go
your
ahead.
if you were to account for your charger coming in, the wattage of charging, a 27-watt charger should, in theory, charge a device in 2/3 the amount of time of an 18-watt charger. So if you have a device that only has like a 13% larger battery, it should still charge, what did I figure out, 37% faster
Yeah, but
versus like
yeah.
50% faster.
But my question is, when you get to certain point, doesn't got a trickle charge because it's preserving the battery, so the phone doesn't kill the battery. The more you use the charging.
Some of them do that. That was what was brought up too, was like the
Hmm.
iPhones, the reason it took 20 minutes longer was, even with a smaller battery, was that they slow down with like that last percentage. Like once you hit 75%, it slows down, and then once you hit that 95%, it really slows down, and it's to preserve the battery. Where other companies that are doing this really fast wired or wireless charging, they go to like that last percentage, like 0 to 99% is like super fast. Like
And that's not good.
some of these that can do full charge in a half an hour, they'll do 75% of that in like 15 minutes. And then from 75 to 95% will be in like the next 10 minutes. So they're at 25%. And then like, the last 5% will slow down and do that in like the last 5 minutes. So like the rest of it, you'll be doing like 4 or 5% a minute. But then the last will be like 1% a minute in order to try to preserve it. But that doesn't necessarily help with the battery life. You gotta take into account the whole time. If you just charge that device up as fast as possible, but what good is that going to do you if in like 5 or 6 months that battery is at 50% of its original capacity because you fried it out?
Correct.
Versus,
That's what I was saying.
like, my iPhone 10 will be 2 years old in um Feb in February. So let's see, that's 4 months away. So the thing's 20 months old, and I still have 94% of the original battery health. Like the average, what Apple considers good based on what they understand that people are going to charge that device, like every night. Apple says 80% after 2 years is good. So 94% after almost very close to that is really good. But that's because I don't do the I'm gonna let it die and then plug it in. I mean, I'll do the top up charging, but I don't do the I'm gonna let this thing get down to 0 and then I'm gonna plug it in and let it charge up to 100% and do that every day, because that's really bad too. The optimal is 25 to 75%.
Yeah, I like to wait till like it's like around 15% or like 10% to then actually like charge it up. Or maybe top it up when it's like 25% in like, like it's early in the
Yeah,
morning,
but the
It used
and
to be
my
too with
problem.
older
Go ahead.
it used to be too with older phones. If you didn't let the thing die and then charge it up to 100% every once in a while, like they wanted you to do what was called shocking, where basically you would let the device die and then you'd plug it in, let it charge up to 100% without using it at all. Because with
Right.
those, like the old um, NiCad batteries and some of like the older of even the newer technology batteries, if you didn't do that, the device didn't actually understand what percentage it was at, and it wouldn't charge to 100% sometimes because if you plugged it in when it was at 20%, it was thinking that you were plugging it in when it was dead.
But you know what? I don't understand the technology because everything's getting super advanced, right? But then we need more battery, but the battery industry haven't advanced with the technology, so it's not keeping up. So the more tech we put, the more the battery health's gonna suffer because it's not capable of handling like it's supposed to. So that's the next logical thing they need to improve.
So here's here's the point of that though. So they do have some crazy new technology, um,
Graphene.
graphene and stuff like that. But the problem is, so that's actually a technology for the charger itself as well as the battery. The
Hmm.
problem is um, there's no like central controlled, like there's no company that's saying we're going to create some protocol for that so that it's unified across all devices and there's no safety regulate. It's a test thing right now. Even like those super VOOC chargers, we don't know because it's such a short lifespan that I don't feel like that technology should be out. Like where we're at with the 30-watt charging and the like well, Alter Tech, you know this, the OnePlus devices with the 30T chargers,
Right.
45 Samsung.
and Samsung with the 45 is starting to get into the dangerous because we don't know yet, like 5 years down the road or even a year from now, is that gonna potentially damage your battery and cause it to blow up? Like, we don't know because that technology is so new, even in the testing field, that we don't know, but I think they push it out because people are so hungry for that technology. But that can be dangerous, and I think that's why Apple is just getting to 18-watt charging because they have enough years in research that they can say, "Hey, we're okay with that, and it's not gonna overheat and blow up your phone." Because even think about like the Note 7, that thing blew up, and that wasn't using ridiculously fast charging. It just had a large battery. And I think that,
Wait, I think the battery was too big for the phone, right?
yeah.
Correct.
Right.
And Ronaldo said
Because
SuperVOOC has been around for a while, almost 4 years. Yeah, it has. And I think for bigger companies, if you think about it this way, for smaller companies, they're willing to risk if there's an issue for that uniqueness. But for a larger company, like, can you imagine the lawsuit? Like, if Apple, because they also have so many more devices they're putting into the field, that if 1% of devices fails, like for example, last year Apple sold 268 million iPhones. If 1% of those fails, you're talking 2.68 million, so roughly 3 million devices failing. If
Wow.
OnePlus comes out and they have 1% of devices failing, yes, that's substantial because they don't have as much of the market share, but that could maybe be like what, a few thousand devices in comparison. So the risk is more for a larger company with technology like that to potentially cause issues. And I think it also is just, it's a multitude of things. Um, we don't know if the newer battery technology also has an effect on how long the battery life is. I mean, do we know if the one of the reasons that some people have issues with some of the OnePlus devices and like, yeah, they've brought 90 hertz and their stuff like that, but part of me wonders, would the OnePlus 7T and the OnePlus 7T Pro and the OnePlus 7 Pro have better battery life if it used a more relaxed, like 18-watt charging versus 30? Like, is that detrimental? Is that affected, like, the total sum of things between the processor, the RAM, the screen, the battery? is important. You know, it's like our whole body, right? Do we know if faster charging has an effect on it? It's like I can get the same amount of calories into my system by eating faster, but does that have a negative effect then on my stomach and my heart versus if I slow down and get the calories in over a longer time? Like, I wonder what that effect of faster charging has on other aspects of the device. Is it a trade-off like, hey, I can charge my phone up really fast, but I'm going to end up having to get a new device in a year because it's not going to last that long, or I'm going to notice processing speed go down, or I'm going to notice display issues. Like, and I think that's why I think other companies are waiting.
That's a fair argument. I mean, that's been on the back of my mind as well because you guys know that new Call of Duty game came out,
Yeah,
and with the 90 hertz refresh rate, the battery life on the OnePlus 7 series is not as good on the one as on the OnePlus 7 6. So I've been charging, quite like pretty often, maybe like 2 or 3 times a day because of Call of Duty. But I'm just saying, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, how much full battery cycles have I gone through with this phone within just a week? After a year from now, after 2 years from now, how is the battery life going to be? Am I have to going to pay extra money to get this battery replaced? Is it more, cost efficient to just get an iPhone? These are things I'm thinking about.
because my concern too would be, okay, so I have an iPhone that thing is $1,449. You know, if I were to pay for that thing up front, right?
Right.
I don't want to have to pay. I mean, I have Apple Care on it. I pay $9.99 a month to get the Apple Care Plus because
Mhm.
that's way cheaper than like I would basically have to like in the whole entire time that the 30-month period is, I would be paying out $300 for Apple Care, and then if I have to replace the screen, that's $29. That's only slightly more than if I had to have that screen replaced once without Apple Care. Like, it's gonna pay for itself. And
Oh
if I
yeah,
have
makes
battery
sense.
issues where the battery gets down, I can just pay like the $79 and replace it versus like 200 and something. But here's my concern. What about companies like OnePlus? Like, what happens if a year and a day from when you got that device, the battery goes kaputs, the display goes out? You're gonna have to pay to get that replaced out of pocket unless you have some sort of insurance on it. And you
Right.
shouldn't have to worry about that. Like, that thing should be able to last you 2 or 3 years. And like I said earlier, how do you know it's just gonna affect the battery? Like, you could end up having to replace the screen in a year because the super fast charging causes some issue that's not known.
All right. I'll say this about OnePlus. I mean,
Although
their
they do their testing.
products, huh?
They do their
Their testing.
testing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's freaking crazy. They spend a lot of time testing their devices, even when you're it's still being pushed out for the consumers. Like after it comes out the production line, it has to go through further testing. And I mean, look at the pop-up camera. I was so freaking afraid that this camera was just gonna break down on me. But up until now, it still works pretty quick. I've had no issues, and it's still in the back of my mind. I mean, maybe like a year from now, 2 years from now, is it still going to perform as it should? I'm not exactly sure, but
I mean, I'd be all over it. I don't know. I kind of got mad at myself because I bought the OnePlus 6T back in March, and then like two
Hmm.
months later, we have a whole new phone that's like substantially better and probably would have cost me the same or less coming out. Like in my opinion, when the 7 came out, the 7 Pro
right.
came out, like I should have just waited
Yeah, the release cycle, it's kind of
because it was
short.
like, well, the other thing is, I went to the T-Mobile store and I got mine because I had done some reading online where you could buy the thing from T-Mobile instead of buying it unlocked, which I wish I would have done because actually it would have been cheaper, but I was one of those like I want it now and I want to try it out type of people.
Right.
So I went into the T-Mobile store and I bought the thing outright. Yeah, it's the 128 gig model, 28 gigs of RAM or whatever. But that thing was like almost $800 by the time I walked out of there with taxes and stuff. It was like $780.
Wow.
That's way higher than
Yeah.
it was directly from OnePlus. Like I should have just bought it from them and waited the 2 or 3 days or whatever, because I found
Yeah.
out
That's
later the
why
shipping's pretty fast, and I would
I
have
actually
saved
recommend
money.
people. And if you're a college student, you also get college discounts. So you
Especially
don't
if
pay taxes.
you're going to buy it outright. I mean, you're going to pay. You're not paying on monthly payments. You're not concerned if you're just going to go buy the thing outright. Like I should have done that because I could have got the McLaren edition for like $50 more than that.
Yep, and this is the second year that OnePlus, if you are first in the pop-up line to buy the phone, you get it for free because they do like a giveaway. This is you're the second person that got it Ultra.
The second one.
Yeah, because the first one was let me see if I see his channel Tech for Love
Um.
for the Tech.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
I know who you're
went for the
talking about.
six.
Yeah. I've seen him already.
Yeah, so you see what I'm talking. He was the first one, so you got it for free. Then you did it this year, then you got it for free as a giveaway for being the first person online. So I think that's a routine for it because I've seen it twice. So I don't know if that's gonna happen the next year.
Yeah, if I had had the money to do it, I could have been out your way, Altered Tech. They invited me
Yeah.
to their pop-up in New York to come out and be in line and like get my hands on the thing and like be like
Oh.
one of like they invited me out and I didn't have the money. If I had had the money to do it, like they literally like I got an email directly from OnePlus and they're like, "We want you to come out and check out this thing, like get your hands on the device, like be like." It was one of those, not the standard like be in line. It was like, "We want you to come out and like be in the store technically before it opens."
Oh.
And I was
Like an
like,
influencer.
I don't have money to do that, unfortunately. And they're like, well, that's all we can offer you because you're not big enough, basically. It's like, dang it. Because I would have been
I wouldn't
sweet.
go because I'm in Boston. If I take the special bus, the Chinese bus, $20. So it'll be 40 to come and go. I could go the same day. I'm in Boston. I'm in almost 4 hours away.
It was pretty sweet, but and then they had one in Chicago too. I could choose, but I
Oh,
was like, I can't
wow, that
afford
was
to
nice.
go either way. That's gas. I got to stay somewhere because it's not like I'm gonna go there and just go there for that and go home. Like
No,
if I'm
but
gonna if I'm gonna go
there was
somewhere
this
I haven't been before, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have fun.
there was a guy in my video who I interviewed. He actually came from Connecticut to that
That's not far.
pop-up. He was like what, fourth or fifth in line.
That's like two
So
hours and a half.
yeah.
Yeah, I think who was it?
But
I've seen
$20 to 20, 40 to go back and forth. That's not bad.
I think it was I Justine and a couple others that like they went from California to New York, or like I've seen some of them go from like California to Chicago to like for like the Verizon's pop up like to test their 5G and stuff. Like that's crazy. I wish I could just be like I'm gonna just shell out like a few $1,000s to go like take a flight and to stay for like a few days in a city, because you got to think like where they're staying is really nice hotel and they have their flight and then they have the device that they're buying, because they didn't even like they didn't some of those didn't even get it given to them. They bought the thing.
Yo,
Yeah, but
MKBHD, he think he's in Hackensack, New Jersey. I
Yeah,
think I Justine
yeah,
was in his place was like a couple days ago. There was a video. She
but
was visiting him or
but let
something,
me give
right?
you a perfect example. Go ahead.
Oh,
Like if you're talking about like promotions or invitation, sometimes you don't have to be big, or you could get a like sponsorship. Look, for example, like China So Lit, he was like 300 and something, and he got a big sponsorship. He said in his channel from Affinity. If you do the right thing, yes, size does matter to a certain point, but if you do the right thing, some companies they're willing to give you a chance. Like you, for example, Michael, you got invited. See, There are chances. It depends.
Yeah. Well, and then
You're never too small. That's what I'm saying.
I got Armadillo Tech sent me 3 cases, which I thought was pretty cool. Like they've sent me a case for for my 11 Pro Max. They sent me one for my wife, and I still have one for the 11 that I'm planning on doing a giveaway at some point. So if anybody has an 11 or is getting an 11, just let me know.
You talking about Armadillo Tech?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
it's
I'm gonna
really
keep in
nice.
touch.
I love the um, pop-up stand. I use
The quick
that.
stand.
I use that almost like a like hold it and not drop it because of how the pop-up comes out.
All right.
And there's a lot of times at night I'm just laying there holding it. And it's nice and I can use it, landscape, portrait, whatever, and it just collapses up next to it. And this thing is rugged.
Yeah, I think he sent me one for the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, and that was the most rugged case I actually picked up for that phone.
And what I like about those cases, they're rugged, but they're not super thick and heavy like out of boxes. And they preserve, they don't, they material doesn't stretch over time like out of box. The rubber
Oh, it
material,
stretches?
yeah. So that's
No.
out of box. That's why I stopped buying out of boxes because they're not worth.
It's like $50 for a case, man.
But I used to get on discount. My friend used to work for Best Buy, so that's another story for another day.
Okay.
I've seen. I don't know. I think one of the things to me that's been really conflicting is to have these companies coming out with smartphones like at the end of the year when like 3-4 months from now, actually by the time the new Pixels are released this next week, it's gonna be like just over 3 months from now. Come February, we're gonna see new companies or new smartphones coming out with like the 865 and all this updated stuff. But that's why you can't really consider that. Like, I saw a video. I think it was Eric was talking about on Easy Computer Solutions was talking about that how like people are gonna say that anything with the 855 is junk when the 865 comes out, just like a lot of people did for the 845.
Well, it's not really to say that it's going to be junk. It's just that, when the new processors are released, the prices for those drop.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I disagree.
So,
It's not junk. It's just people say that, and that's what I don't get. So, people
Yeah,
will
but
criticize, like they criticize the Pixel and say, "Oh, it's coming out like so late in the year, like 2 months before the end of the year. Why are they doing this?" Well, because no matter they're releasing based on the hardware that they had at the time that they made the thing.
yeah, but if we're keeping it real, if, for example, 1 millisecond versus the new processor is not gonna change. You know what I
No.
mean? 1 second is not gonna make your life faster or better, or it's gonna hinder my process from being productive. I mean, people take it overboard. Sometimes I wonder because the community be like, oh, 1 second is better. 2 seconds. That's not gonna add in the long run.
Um.
Sometimes it get annoying.
Yeah, I think it depends though, because, for example, my iPhone 10 processor is still really fast, like in today's standards. Like that thing, a lot of times will beat out. For example, I've seen speed tests that are done, and that thing will beat out the A55 even when it comes to some things. And you're talking about a 2-year-old device almost.
Hmm.
But the A13 in my new phone, like encryption speeds and stuff like that for videos, is crazy fast. So
No, I agree, but it also depends on the type of person using the phone. If you're a
yeah.
creator, I understand, but if you're a regular, not average consumer, I hate that word, average person, then it won't matter 1 second. So you got to take in consideration of the person and the device. So, some people just make little things big. It depends how you use your device also.
And then there's some people that just always want the newest phone.
Yo, but there still is a possibility, man. Let's say the next Snapdragon maybe
Mhm.
improves, battery performance by 25% or something crazy, man. That
Oh,
there
that's
is a
different.
possibility, that could happen. So
That's
you might
true.
be missing out, you know. But for the most part, every other year, you're not really gonna see a huge increase in performance.
That's true, but I think it depends on device too, because for example, like one thing that was substantial improvement was battery life, and even compared to like last year's iPhones, and you look at the photos and that that jump in like the last 2 years from the iPhone 10 to the 10s Max or the 10s series was pretty good, but then this year was like I think um did either of you see the video? I can't remember who did it where he compared like every iPhone from the like starting with the first iPhone, every single
Who's the
one with
boss?
video. Yeah, who's the
Yeah,
boss?
who's the boss?
If you looked like the iPhone 6 to the iPhone 7 was one of those because that was when HDR and everything came in. And
Right.
then the 10s to the 11 was like another jump again. And it wasn't just in introducing night mode, it was the background, like that backlighting and everything. It was crazy to see. Yeah, and that's the other thing, like somebody just mentioned. So the processor itself a lot of times interferes with what camera modules can be used. Like I know older Snapdragons wouldn't support beyond um like 16 megapixel sensors sometimes, or even
Oh
12
yeah, that's true.
megapixel.
Yeah.
Like the newer phones
That's
coming out
true.
with like 48 megapixel and 64 megapixel sensors. See, now some people are like, well, that's you don't need that. But here's what people don't realize. Some of these phones that are showing saying, "Hey, we're using 16 megapixel," are actually using the 48 megapixel and 64 megapixel sensors, and they're only using 16 megapixels of it because basically they're taking 3 or 4 pixels and clumping them together, and that's how they get that high quality. Like I know Huawei does that with some of theirs. They do pixel binning, where basically,
Yo, yeah, but even with the new slow motion features, it was only until the Snapdragon 855 or 45 was even possible to get
yeah.
that, frame rate.
Well,
So
that's why like functions aren't brought to older devices, even though they could, because it's hardware locked. Even like some of the things like the front camera 4K video, even though you have the same size pixel, same size sensor on like the iPhone, that sensor, it's the processor. Because other phones have much larger sensors, but the processor limits it, and um, sometimes it's how they handle it with RAM too. Because um, did you guys know that like, it was rumored that the new iPhones were going to have 6 gigs of RAM, right, instead of 4 or whatever?
Yeah, I heard that.
oh yeah.
But what doesn't show up under Geekbench and some stuff like that, but has been discovered in some other teardowns and stuff, is they actually did, but what they did was 4 gigs of it is for normal RAM usage, and 2 gigs of it is put aside for the camera for photo and video
Oh,
processing. They actually use it as like a buffer.
makes sense.
It's similar to Apple did that with the iPad Pros, where the highest end, the 512 gig, and then when the 1 terabyte model came out, they had more RAM on them because they used some of that RAM to basically load data onto it and then offload from that RAM to the storage. Because when you have larger capacity storage, it requires basically a little bit of RAM because it can't transfer direct because you have so much more. It's like having a larger building. You have so much more space to move around. So they added more RAM to be able to handle the task until it can be loaded to the storage. Well, they're doing the same thing with cameras so that they're faster. Because can you imagine if you had to process all those frames? Like you're trying to process 12 megapixel frames. You're basically trying to process 108 million pixels at once and then put those together to make an HDR or a night image, and then you're trying to do all the other processing to it. The RAM handles that and the processor. And that's the other thing. Like with some of these processors, they also add on like on the side chips where um, they have like what's referred to as the neural core. People don't see that. They just look at the main SoC. They don't always see like the
Right. Just
secondary
like
stuff that's on there or what's even built into the processor itself.
you'll see like maybe something has like what 4 Cairo cores or something like that,
Yeah.
and like different things mixed up.
Well, it's like Apple like when people look at the new processors, they look at them and they see them as a hexacore or a 6 core. Well, technically so with the iPhone 10, that was a 4 core, basically 4 primary cores, and then they actually had 2 secondary cores, but it was listed as a quad core even though it was technically a 6 core processor. Then last year they did something similar, but they listed them all, but they were all primary, so they were all on kind of together. This year they kind of did the same thing that the 10 did, and it's an 8 core, but 6 cores are primary, and then 2 of them are secondary for working with like the um alongside the neural core and photo processing and things like that.
Yeah, man, it's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah.
I'm still surprised that Intel, they're not in this same business with the smartphone chips.
Probably gonna take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I don't know. I think well, and then Apple bought the Intel, bought their modem
Modems.
technology, their modem part of the market. So I think uh, we're gonna see them take advantage of that.
Well, they need to do something. It's a lot of different people. I mean, next year is going to be. Hopefully, next year is better all around when it comes to a lot of different things. I'm really just,
Samsung, man,
yeah. That's what I'm waiting on. I'm
that new
waiting for
camera
Samsung
system.
and hopefully, OnePlus and
5G.
yeah, 5G is probably going to be at 60 or 70%. Hopefully, next year something needs to change because this year, I mean, this year was good. We had a lot of good phones that came out. We had a lot of different things that dropped. We had a lot of different game changers as far as like different companies doing different innovative things, the foldable phone and all that other good stuff. I just hope next year we get a lot more innovation and we get a lot better. We get better stuff. We get way better stuff.
It's funny because I'm hearing rumors already that the Snapdragon 865 is going to be like twice as fast as the 855 and that. But here's the problem: you already have processors that are like twice as fast as the 855. So then those will get updated next year. They're still going to be behind.
That is true.
Like what I really want to see is I really want to see those Kirin chips come to the US. I want to see those like the 980 and the 990.
We ain't got the manpower, or well, not the manpower. It's just the fact that we got the whole situation that's going on between the situation with them, so we're not going to be able to see that technology at all.
It's a bummer because it's actually up there. Like the the iPhone 11s, those processors, not even the X series, like just the A13 series, is testing at higher speeds than like the A12X that was in the iPad Pros last year, and those things were hitting 500, 600,000 in benchmarks, and the iPhones now you're seeing hit like close to 700,000. That's a huge leap.
Yeah,
Like that's huge. Like you're talking 40% faster than some of the nearest Android devices when it
yeah.
comes to, and yeah, benchmarks aren't everything, but they are when it comes to um I mean, it gives you a valid point to jump off from. If that's what it shows in benchmarks, then everyday use is going to be showed similar.
Well, I mean, it's just hopefully one day we come to agreement with them, and that ban is lifted, and we can get that type of those type of phones over here in our market. But it's like at this point, it's like screaming out into a vast amount of nothingness. That's not going to happen because it's just the way it's set up. We're not going to get that experience. Now, the thing about it is, these other companies, they need to try to take what some of these overseas companies are doing. Like, a lot of people are not talking about the Oppo Reno Ace. I mean, it's not really a big phone right now or a big subject matter, but that phone is pretty good for what you get for it. I mean, it's at this point, it's like it's really like a lot of different things out there to talk about, but it's like when it comes to processors and when it comes to cameras and everything else, unless somebody does something very innovative and they change the game completely, then we really ain't got nothing to talk about because ain't nothing really going to change. The only thing that's going to change is the processing speed, how quick a picture is taken and processed. And I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, if you really think about it, the only changes that we've gotten in the last 2 years is night mode. And now we've gotten better megapixels and we've gotten 4K and a couple of other things. I mean, nothing has substantially changed throughout the entire smartphone community until we get something different, you
Well,
know.
that's true because like you look at, for example, the 3A Pixel 3A series versus the Pixel 3 series, and one of the complaints, and it's really one of the things that differentiates, is the processing speed, and that's about it. Like people talk about they go to click to take a photo with their 3A, and it takes a second or so to process.
Yeah,
But
but that's people. That's
but the,
people complaining. That's people complaining about something that they really shouldn't complain about at the end of the day because it's like there was a time where we couldn't even take a picture without the picture actually looking a certain way.
yeah,
So a lot of stuff that I'm hearing from different from different people online or on YouTube, as far as like, when it comes to certain stuff, I mean, it's a bunch of complaining. Like there's nothing you can do. You bought the phone, so therefore you have to figure out a way to maneuver for what you got. Like anybody will tell you that anybody that's been buying smartphones, whatever you got is what you got. If you don't have something that is of higher quality or of quality, then it's like, I mean, you have to deal with what you got. So
yeah.
it's like when I hear people complaining about the 3A taking all day to process a picture, at the end of the day, it's just that's what you got. I mean, you have a Snapdragon 730 processor. It may be a Pixel phone, but at the end of the day, the processing speed, you shouldn't complain about it. I mean, you got something that somebody else can't even afford. That's how I look at it.
Well, and it's like for example, I have a
Yeah.
Honor 8X that I won in a giveaway, and that thing, like I feel like for the use that I can get out of it, and I've tested with it, it runs pretty fast for being an older device. But you don't have, like, I can't get the Play Store to run at all, and but in other markets, that's that's where I think we are lacking too. Is we don't have nearly as much competition as is necessary. Like, I think the reason we've seen innovation lack in companies here is because there's not as many of them. Like, you only really have a couple companies competing, and they're not even technically competing because you don't really see very much people going, well, I'm gonna get a Samsung phone, and I was an iPhone user, or I was a Samsung user, and I'm gonna get an iPhone. Like, people like what they like, and more that we see in competition is between Samsung device and OnePlus and other Android companies. Like, if those companies don't step up, that's why we see competition, I think, falling off, is because iOS isn't competing with Android, not really. They are, but they aren't. Like, people are going to like it or they're not going to like it. And if every Android company is basically coming out with the same thing, it's just going to continue the way it's going to go. I
Right.
I
Yo,
could see a company like Google could have stepped in and they could have absolutely destroyed the market. I think I was talking
yo.
to you about this at a
Speaking of
time.
that, there's a good question,
Go
compliment over here. He says, Jay says, if Pixel was branded by any other company other than Google, nobody would be hype.
I don't know. I actually kind of disagree with that. I actually think that there might be more hype because other
Yeah,
companies
you're right.
tend to,
Less expectations.
well, and other companies tend to, because they could focus on it more. Like, if that's their primary thing, that's Google's issue. That's where Apple has been smart about things. Like, they're able to focus on all those things and maintain it, even though they sell computers, they sell iPads, they have the operating system and the hardware. I think Google's thing is they don't really need it because they make so much money with advertising, and they still make money because a majority of people don't switch from Google as the default search engine on their iPhone, even though they can. So they make money from that, and they have Chrome, and they have other stuff. And I think if another company had the Pixel, like, they could have it be the same name. Let's say it was called I don't know. Let's say there was some company that came out and they called it the Asteroid Pixel because they're this
ahead.
smartphone company called Asteroid, and that's what they do is they make phones, and they're called Asteroid because they make super fast phones that can take really good night quality images. That's their focus, let's say. That's all they're focusing on.
Yo, he wants to know, name 5 things the Pixel could do well. We got the camera, that's number 1. Fast software updates, that's number 2.
Number 3, voice assistant.
That's
Ecosystem.
1. Ecosystem, like with what? Me with Gmail.
Like that,
Software
and working
integration.
well with their other devices, because that would be the disadvantage of another company running it, is then they would have to look to Google and be like, hey, we want to make sure that this runs well with it. And other companies do that. Like, you can load the apps on your Samsung device, but Google has the brains. They're developing the next version of the operating system. So they're able to control that, and they're able to control the interaction between all the devices because they make it.
I got a question. Out of all the Pixels that was pushed out, does any of them look better than this?
No,
Right?
I don't
Nope,
think
nope,
so.
nope.
It's That's the thing though, that like people are so forgiving because they say this is only the 4th generation, but do they not forget that there was up through the Nexus 6P before that? So they're on like what? How many years of Nexus phones were there?
Oh,
It was a ton, man.
Like 6 or 7? Like, I'm pretty sure
Probably 7.
Google has been working on smartphones, if you include the Nexus devices, almost as long as the iPhone's been around? Close to it? What? At
Yeah,
least
but
10.
they've
9,
They've
10
had
years.
people from Motorola, from HTC. No, they brought some of them into the Pixel company. I mean, the expectations was high, man.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So cameras. Let's see. Cameras. Vanilla Android. So you don't have people. So if you just want the simple things, and the advantage of that is, as we've seen with all of Android, and if Google is struggling with battery life, is the more you throw in there, it's harder to maintain good battery life. Like if you're throwing all that extra stuff, then the processor has to handle that. Like it has to know where to keep that in the background, or it's going to have to load up every time. So having something that just is simple
Yeah, but
and
come on,
can
man. They
do
should.
things without all the extra. Like there's a lot of people that just want a device that just works, and they don't want to have to look all over the place and figure out new settings, and they don't want to have to figure out, like,
All right.
for the most
So
part, everything that the Pixel has, right? Every other Android device has,
yeah.
for the most part. But if I hand somebody a Note 9 and they're gonna have to figure out the differences.
All right. So why don't these manufacturers just like create like a mode with it has like a stock Android mode. It gives you the option to just, turn everything off. You save battery life.
They do. Some of these companies, like
But
they have that, like
Well,
they'll
they
have
had it back in the days.
the easy mode, where it just limits like to the basic apps and stuff.
that's just way too much. That just nah.
That cuts out way too much. But there are companies that do, like Samsung has started doing
Yeah,
that even, like
but back in the days, they had the right thing that was called Play Store or Play Edition phones. So you
Yo,
had
Jay wants
either
to get on
this.
the stream, yo.
Yo, Jay, that's up to you.
okay.
Jay, if I'm
He will have to
do you
find
have
him on Twitter, I guess. Or he
just
can
I don't know if y'all
yeah.
remember the Play Store and they had the Play Edition phones, and you could pick either the Samsung or the Play Edition Samsung.
Yo, did you ever get a Play Edition?
No, I never did. I was close enough to get one, but I never did.
They're always expensive, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason they don't do that is because they work so hard on differentiating themselves, and then what are you gonna tell somebody, like, what are you gonna do? Like, are certain apps gonna have to hide themselves if they use the functions that are not in basic Android? Like, you go and you grab a Note 9 or a Note 10 and you hit some mode to go into a basic function. If things aren't built into the default, it's gonna have to hide. So like Dex mode would have to turn itself off. Um, S Pen support turn itself off. Um, Swiping using the pen to change cameras turn itself off. Like you're basically gonna remove all that function, and then you're gonna have to remember to turn it back on when you want it, and that's gonna be basically like resetting the operating system every time you switch.
Yeah, but what if you had like a you go into this setting where it has like a bunch of toggles for each you know thing, and you could just pick and choose what do you want. Because right now for Samsung, you have to go through every single app, every single setting. There's so many different pathways to go into to just turn off a feature. So if they can make things a lot more simple, so you can just go through it just in one you know click, and you could just get everything you know.
That's true. Well, that's why I have like one of the things I've talked about. The issue with Android is it's not only fragmentation between different versions of the operating system, but between devices. Like I can hand an iPhone user basically any iPhone, and they'll figure it out. Even with like like swipe gestures and stuff are
Right, right.
not what differentiate. But like I hand you a OnePlus device, and you got to figure out how to even use the gestures. Sometimes I hand you a
Yeah.
Samsung device. Like you can't just. But I think that's what Google's trying to do. Like
Well, it depends on
they're
the person,
requiring
because
that gestures work a certain way.
Yeah, with the
I
OnePlus 7
agree
Pro,
and
I'm
disagree.
forced to use the new Android 10 gestures. You can't go back to the old OnePlus gestures.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, a lot of people were complaining about it. They're like, "Yo, we want the OnePlus gestures, but it's not available anymore." So,
Well, and the only option that Google's allowing is for them to go back to the 3 button. They're not even allowing like the old like Android Pie with the button in the back here, or it's either the new all gestures or the 3 button, and that's it. Where
Bro,
OnePlus, when
getting
they
back to
added
the
their
subject,
gestures, they allowed either the 3 button or the standard pill and back button.
yeah, getting back to the question of simplicity, that also depends on the person and the user. Because if you're an advanced user, it depends on the person. I know
Yeah,
some companies make it simple, but not everybody know how to use iPhones. I give an iPhone to my mother, she don't know how to use it. She hate it. She said because she been using since day one Samsung, so she's accustomed to Samsung already.
that's
So
it
it
does
depends
depend
on the
on the
user.
user. But what I meant though was like if they already have it, like since every iPhone's the same. But if you are, that's the thing is, if you already have a Samsung, you're probably going to continue with Samsung because you're used to it. So for companies competing, how do they convince somebody to look at their device? They're probably not going to unless they follow like a standard version.
you think that's why the Pixel is so similar to the iPhone in some ways?
Um, I think so. Like, but
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
actually brought up that I wanted Um, I was thinking that Google this year should come out with a device. What they should have done was they should have created their own version of Android that offers things that you can't just put on other Android devices. Like you can port their camera over. There's already a port uh, for like the recorder app and things like that. If they basically created almost like a DRM equivalent of Android where the advantages that they have are only to them, that would be huge. Some of the stuff they tried to do that with, but everybody figures a way around it. So if they put something in their filing, basically, that makes them differentiate so that way they keep the advantage, because that's where Apple has the advantage. There's no other company running iOS, but there's like 10,000 Android devices out there. So as long as they have the right basic hardware, which there's dozens of those, and the right basic version of the operating system, which a lot of the requirements are only like Android 8 or newer, they can use it. If Apple or if Google basically came out and did an Apple where, hey, we create the hardware and we create the software like they were supposed to do, but keep things only to their system, it would be a huge advantage. But they don't have anything that's only available through them anymore. Even their cameras aren't unique anymore. So if they're not competing on price by offering what they do at like substantially lower price to get somebody in, they're not going to be able to compete.
Right.
I don't know. I think that's where we're headed is they're not really be able to compete if they don't offer something unique, and the Android has to compete with all the other Android devices. And what is unique about, like, what does Google have to offer that no other company does anymore?
And what do you guys think about these phones from overseas? I think they're rising in popularity. Are they?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really about to switch my format up, man, because I really feel like I'm tired of talking about certain companies. Like it's starting to become like redundant, and I'm really starting to get more interested in, Xiaomi and Oppo and all these other companies, man, because it's like they change it up. Some companies do follow, some companies like you got some people that might piggyback off somebody else's idea as far as a camera or anything else like that, but people change it up. Vivo came out with a phone last year, and I believe Oppo came out with around. I mean, last year was the birth of the pop-up camera, and it's like ever since then, now everybody is following. But it's like I heard somebody say, "Oh, OnePlus is trying to follow the trend," and I'm like, OnePlus can't follow a trend that somebody else started for them that's already a part of their company. Because Oppo is the big company over OnePlus, so it's like they just basically just said let's do that too. But they're doing something different. I
Yeah.
mean, Google, the Pixel 4, for the most part, my final comments on it. And when I say my final comments, I mean it's like I'm done with this phone at this point. Not because I don't have it or can't afford it. It's just that I'm just tired of hearing about it already. My biggest thing is, the radar thing is interesting because in the few years they can implement that and they can improve on that and they can add new things to it and they can be innovative. But as far as right now, I mean, right now it's going to be a long battle for them to even get something out of there. That's pretty much it. Other than that, I'm just mad T-Mobile doesn't have 128 gigs. They got 64 gigs. I'm still pissed off about that. But that's pretty much it with me. I'm done with the Pixel. Yeah, I'm done with all that.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't realize that they only did the 128 or only the 64 gig.
Yeah,
I thought that was.
that's why I haven't. That's why I haven't really have any interest in it.
I
Because
thought that was
if I was to buy it off of Google's website, man, I'll be out $1,000, and I can't afford to be spending that much money on phone when I got stuff I got to do. So I figure, hey, let me go over to T-Mobile and see what T-Mobile got. T-Mobile has it, but they only have the 64 gig. So
I thought that was. I
Oh.
thought that was only for the orange model that they did the
The
lock.
orange model is not even 64 gig. The orange model is 128 gigs. I don't know who put that rumor out there and said that they were only 64 gig for the Oso Orange, but the Oso Orange comes in 128 gig variant.
Yeah, it does, but I didn't know if like with T-Mobile, because somebody told me that with T-Mobile they were the only one that was just 64 was the orange one, and they offered both capacities in the
No,
other color.
T-Mobile only offers you the black and the white, and it's only 64 gigs for both the XL and the Pixel 4.
I wonder if that's because they only basically credit you or allow you to like you have to pay so much up front, and they'll only cover up to was it like $750 or $800 of it.
I'm not really sure. Either
So
way,
probably
I'm not messing with it because they don't have 128 gigs.
they probably only want to cover like the $50 or $150 of it or whatever.
Yeah.
And maybe it could be they couldn't produce enough and they figured that other companies, I don't know, because like
I've never seen a company do this before. Like usually companies I have one or the other. I've never seen one company just sell the phone for 64 gigs and that's it. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm pretty sure they have an excuse for that. But there's no excuse for why they couldn't sell both the 64 and the 128 gig. It doesn't make any sense to me.
that is weird because like on AT&T, what they did, they charged more for it,
I'm sure.
like $60 more for the base for the 64 gig version, both of the Pixel 4 and the 4 XL, and $80 more for the 128 gig.
I'm sure.
It's $120 difference, like instead of $100 difference to jump screen sizes and keep the same capacity. Then it's
Pretty
crazy.
much. But it's just it doesn't make any sense to me at all. Why would they sell it for that?
Like $1,089 for the Pixel 4 XL 128 gig. Like that's ridiculous. I can pay $20 more and get the 256 gig 12 gig of RAM, Note 10 Plus.
Can you send the link to Jay Farmer?
I did.
Okay.
I don't know why I sent it to him twice, actually. So he's having
But you got to
problems.
think about the Pixel because Pixel is, yeah, we're talking about it because we're the techie, but it also comes down to brand recognition. Because I asked all my family that question, and nobody knew the Pixel, only one person, because they have heard me talk about it, but they wasn't sure what it was Pixel. So you also got to think what is in stake here, because United States only two companies that people knows, which is Apple and Samsung. So brand recognition does matter at the end of the day.
Well, Eric said, and that makes sense, they probably know the Pixel won't sell so well. Why would they eat all that inventory? And
That's true. That's
they
true.
have to
Yeah,
add
that makes sense.
their bootloader and apps, which would
That's true.
eat the cost, and they
But
know it won't
I
sell.
mean, you still gotta factor in the fact that that sounds like an excuse.
Yeah,
You know?
but like I think that's why carriers like they'll carry all the models of like an iPhone because they don't add all that stuff. Or they carry all the models of like a Samsung phone because they know it's going to sell well enough that they'll take the time to just do it.
Yo, I actually think the Pixel 3a series is going to outsell the Pixel 4 next month for Black Friday for the holidays.
I think
Jay
so
Farmer
too.
says something.
Because the Pixel 3a is definitely going to go on sale.
Yeah, well, they did they last year the 3 went on sale around Black Friday, and I think that we're going to see the 4 do it again this year, so it'll be interesting to see though. But I don't think it's going to be enough that you're going to see like the 3A and 3A XL are already on, like they're already half the price of the Pixel 4. Like Pixel 4 starting. Like I've seen the 3A XL for like $400. And as far as that too, a lot of people get their phones on payments. So if a company is charging the same payment for a device, they're going to go with what's better. Or they're going to be able to get it for less even, like they can get an S10 or an S10 Plus for cheaper.
I don't know, man. I'm just thinking about the iPhone 11 right now, man. The cameras on that is just freaking sick. I was supposed to get the Pixel 4 like for my channel, but just because I assumed it's going to have the best camera, but with the iPhone 11, crazy.
And I think that by next year, I mean, the problem is they'll say, oh, we're going to release an update to do this or that, or, they'll talk about the future. But by the time they get there, other companies have already done it. They're going to lose it. Like you can't say, "Oh, we're going to bring this down the road." There's too many companies already doing what they're looking to say we're going to do. So, I don't know. I don't here's what I think. If Ultratech, you ready for this? We were talking about this pre-stream. If I were the CEO of Google,
What would you do?
I would have copied Apple but beat them at their own game in a couple ways.
Okay, let's see how.
So, you know how Apple came out? They have the iPhone 11, and then they have the Pro and Pro Max, right? The 11 has a larger display, at lower resolution, but offers the same internal specs and one fewer cameras. If Google did it, what they should have done is flipped some things around. So offer a smaller display, offer better resolution but maybe still lower, and a single camera. So basically an upgrade to last year's Pixel to keep that price down. They could have come out, they could have said, hey, we're going to come out starting $650 and you're going to get the upgraded processor, you're going to get the upgraded abilities of things with like the live caption and stuff like that. You're going to get all the advantages of this year's Pixel. We're going to bring it to you. It's going to be a 5.7-inch display. It's going to be 1080p display. It's going to have the smaller battery. It's going to have 64 and 128 gig model options. It's going to be $649 starting and then $749 for the 128 gig model option. That would have matched the iPhone 11 price. It would have better display. It would only have one camera. But then they could have done a Pixel 4 Pro and Pixel 4 Pro XL or something equivalent, maybe different naming, and had those have a 6.1-inch and 6.5-inch display. So those would be 0.4 inches and 0.8 inches larger than the base model, and have those start at 128 gig, offer 128 gig, 256 and 512 gig options, offer more RAM, and then they could have offered those starting at they could have actually probably started those at $999. So they would have copied Apple with like the Pro lines, but offered the bigger displays and the higher resolution on the Pro, and then had the base model be more of it's like a bump up from the the A series would be, but offer a price where somebody can come in, but still giving them a reason to go with the Pro devices by having additional cameras, larger display, higher resolution, larger battery.
But okay, answer this for a minute. Sorry to interrupt you. If you're a consumer and you go to the store, right, and they show you the phone, the Pixel, the Samsung, and the Apple, right? You're not gonna pick the Pixel because you don't have the brand recognition.
You
So
might if the price
so
is low enough.
now because it's not even about price. Because even my family told me I'd rather pay for something that I know it got quality and brand recognition that it's gonna last long, that I know it's already been proven out there. You see, that's why I keep going back to that. It's no matter how you put the horsepower that if people are not well educated or brand recognition, they're not gonna go for that. Because I showed them the picture, I showed them videos and everything about everything. They're like, I never heard of that phone. I don't know what's that. So you gotta look into that. I'm talking about in general, um, not only techies.
But also, don't you think some people, the reason they don't have that brand recognition is because they're not in the same market with the other companies? Like they would get more recognition if they were in that same price point and offered similar specs and they would get pushed more by the carriers too, like if they were offering what they wanted, because I know a lot of the people working at stores, like they have their own personal input besides the benefit that they get by selling a more expensive device, but they also have
Correct.
their own personal input where if they can say, hey, guess what? Yeah, you might have not heard of the Pixel, but you're able to get, you know, a good device, and this is what I would go with, that more people would buy that because as to me, if I'm working somewhere and somebody says, "Here's my budget," I'm going to try to offer them the best. And if Google had been able to step in and do that now, as opposed to, and available on all carriers, as opposed to maybe next year when the 4A and 4A XL come out, they're at a lower price point and offer decent specs and are on all carriers. If Google had done it now, they're getting in ahead of the game. They're matching themselves up with Samsung doing the S10e, the S10 and the S10 Plus, Apple doing the 10R, the 10s, the 10s Max, the 11, the 11 Pro, and the 11 Pro Max. They're saying that we're playing on the same ball field, like they tried to do with the price. So coming in with the specs, I think they would be able to maybe get people to look their direction more, and there would be more people like us that are giving Google basically free advertisement that would say, hey, go check this out because it's actually worth it.
Yeah, I tried, but they didn't want to listen. They're like, that phone has not been proven in the market. That's what basically they told me. 98% of the family members and friends.
That's true. I mean, some people are picky that way, but then you have like new consumers that are just wanting what's in their price range. I've seen people walk out the door of a place because they didn't have something in their price range, or they did and they knew just enough to know that that wasn't worth it.
True. I
Like
agree.
when I went to build a computer, I did my research and I could have gotten better, but I wasn't willing to spend the extra. Like what I got was more than enough what I needed and was going to be able to be updated in the future. And there are a lot of people that are like that, and I don't know that. I'm not like I'm more the average consumer about building a computer than I am about a smartphone. And I think there are a lot of people that, especially with phones getting more and more expensive, they want to get as much out of it as they can and that are smart enough and are actually doing their research. Like,
Well, I'm gonna say something quick. I'm gonna head out because I only been 2 hours and I
oh
want to
yeah,
do a couple things. Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate it. So I'll see you on the other
always.
side. So thanks for everything. Thanks, fellas, and I'll talk to you later.
Peace out.
Um, Peace out.
Yeah, man, my phone's at 1% right now, no lie. I'm on the
Okay, I'm
OnePlus
about to.
7T, man.
Yeah,
So if I,
everybody's starting to join the chat, and I'm like, I need to get off from here too. It's been almost 2.5 hours. It's 10:30 here, and so um, well, I think we've had a good conversation. There were some stale points some points tonight, but Altered Tech, thanks for joining me. Do you want me to link your page in the description?
oh yeah, sure, go ahead, man. Thanks for
Okay.
having me on, man.
Yeah. Have a good night. I don't know what happened to Unlocked Custom Droid. He's on mute right now. So, but I'll link his channel as well, and of course my own, and um, Tech for Your Needs, and some others. So, have a good one. Thank you.
All right, man.
Good night, everybody. As always, this was Michael Pepper Tech Talk, and thank you for all joining me tonight, and I will see you next week.